On the surface, it looked like chaos. A billionaire TV personality taking on the political elite. The tweets, the scandals, the spontaneous rallies, all playing out in full view of the public. But behind the scenes, something very different was happening. It wasn't improvisation. It was precision. Every message was tested. Every controversy calculated. Every decision shaped by voices the public never saw, advisors, strategists, data scientists, media operatives. Some were loyal. Others were opportunists. All of them played a role in crafting a campaign that defied every expectation. This wasn't just politics. It was theater, it was disruption, and it was power consolidated behind closed doors. In this video, we're going to uncover the internal dynamics, secret meetings, and high-stakes decisions that turned an unlikely candidacy into a presidential victory. What really happened behind the curtain of Donald Trump's campaign? The answers may surprise you. In the summer of 2015, few people in Washington truly believed that Donald Trump would run for president, let alone win. For decades, he had teased the idea, but most assumed it was a publicity move. When he finally announced his candidacy from the lobby of Trump Tower, it was met with laughter from pundits and polite dismissal from political insiders. But what followed was not a joke. It was the beginning of one of the most disruptive presidential campaigns in American history. At the time, the United States was politically divided, economically anxious, and socially volatile. Millions of Americans were still feeling the aftershocks of the 2008 financial crisis. The faith in traditional institutions, government, media, corporate power was at a historic low. Establishment candidates like Jeb Bush and Hillary Clinton were viewed by many as symbols of a broken system. Voters were frustrated, distrustful, and looking for someone completely different. Trump's campaign didn't follow the usual script. It didn't rely on traditional polling or decades-old political consultants. Instead, it operated on instinct, media savvy, and a deep understanding of what would provoke attention. From the start, the tone was blunt, aggressive, and unapologetically populist. Trump's messaging was deliberately provocative on immigration, on trade, on America's role in the world. What many saw as reckless or offensive, his base saw as brutally honest. His team, although small and disorganized in the beginning, leaned into the chaos. Trump's unpredictability wasn't a bug, it was a feature. Every inflammatory comment kept him in the headlines. Every media backlash only reinforced his outsider status. His ability to dominate the news cycle, often with just a single tweet or soundbite, became a cornerstone of the campaign's momentum. Internally, the campaign was a battleground of personalities and power plays. Many aides came and went. There were leaks, internal disagreements, and confusion over roles. But one thing remained constant: Trump's total control over the message. Unlike most candidates, he didn't defer to advisors. He was the strategy. As the primaries unfolded, traditional Republican candidates fell one by one. Trump's ability to channel resentment toward the establishment, weaponize media coverage, and energize disaffected voters gave him a clear path to the nomination. Still, many within the Republican Party resisted. They called him dangerous, unqualified, divisive. But the voters disagreed. By the time the general election began, the Trump campaign had transformed from a political curiosity into a national movement. But beneath the surface, there were still serious questions about the people guiding the campaign, the tactics being used, and the forces, both domestic and foreign, influencing the outcome. To understand what really happened behind closed doors, we have to go deeper into the internal decision-making, the media manipulation, and the alliances that defined the campaign from the inside out. Behind every presidential candidate is a team. But Donald Trump's campaign wasn't built by political veterans or establishment operatives. It was shaped by a rotating cast of outsiders, loyalists, family members, and, at times, complete unknowns. Some stayed for months. Others were gone in weeks. But together, they helped build a campaign unlike anything modern American politics had seen. At the center of the operation was Trump himself, both the candidate and the message. His instincts were trusted more than polling. His impulses often overruled strategy. But surrounding him were individuals who understood how to turn those instincts into a movement. Early in the campaign, Trump relied heavily on his longtime political advisor Roger Stone, who encouraged a brash, unfiltered tone that came to define the campaign's voice. Stone had deep experience in Republican politics, but his role faded as internal power struggles intensified. By mid-2016, new names emerged, figures who would come to define the campaign's final stretch. Steve Bannon, the former executive chairman of Breitbart News, was brought in as chief executive. He was not a traditional campaign manager. He was a political disruptor. Bannon believed the path to victory ran through cultural warfare, media dominance, and anti-establishment populism. He encouraged Trump to double down on nationalism, law and order rhetoric, and attacks on global elites. Alongside Bannon was Kellyanne Conway, who became campaign manager in August 2016. She was a pollster by trade, skilled in messaging and television appearances. Conway often served as a bridge between Trump's chaotic impulses and the public-facing discipline the campaign sometimes needed. She defended him relentlessly in interviews, helping to reframe controversies and blunt criticism. Also operating behind the scenes was Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law. Though young and politically inexperienced, Kushner played a central role in digital strategy, media relations, and campaign infrastructure. He coordinated with tech consultants and data firms to build a highly targeted outreach system, including controversial work with companies like Cambridge Analytica. His influence wasn't always visible, but it was substantial. The broader circle included figures like Corey Lewandowski, Trump's early campaign manager, known for his aggressive tactics and combative relationship with the press. Paul Manafort, who briefly took control of the campaign during the convention period, brought establishment experience, but later became the subject of multiple federal investigations. Many of these individuals clashed with each other, jockeying for influence, leaking to the media, and shaping different versions of Trumpism behind the scenes. This internal power struggle created constant volatility. There were no clear hierarchies, no stable chains of command. Decisions were made on the fly, often based on Trump's mood or a single news headline. Staffers had to be reactive, opportunistic, and loyal to a fault. The campaign functioned more like a startup than a traditional political machine, chaotic, improvised, but fast-moving and media-savvy. What unified this unlikely team was not ideology, it was alignment with Trump's core instincts: confrontation, dominance, and disruption. They didn't try to turn him into a conventional politician. They leaned into the chaos and helped him turn it into a weapon. While the public saw a man on stage stirring up crowds and clashing with the press, behind him stood a fragmented, unconventional, and often unstable group of individuals who each left their mark on the campaign in different ways. Their rivalries, missteps, and strategies didn't just shape the road to victory. They defined the tone of a presidency that would follow. Donald Trump's campaign didn't just use the media, it mastered it. While most candidates struggled to buy airtime or frame their messages through press releases, Trump dominated headlines through shock, spectacle, and relentless visibility. It was not an accident. It was a strategy. From the earliest days of the campaign, Trump understood that attention was power. He didn't need to win over traditional gatekeepers. He needed to stay in the spotlight. Whether through controversial soundbites, personal insults, or bold promises, he created a feedback loop of coverage. News outlets couldn't look away, even when they were critical. In fact, criticism often helped. Major networks gave Trump an unprecedented amount of free media coverage, estimated to be worth billions of dollars. His speeches were broadcast live. His tweets were treated as breaking news. His rallies were shown in full, without filters or fact checks. While other candidates paid for ads, Trump used outrage to get airtime for free. Behind the scenes, his campaign team leaned into this media chaos. Steve Bannon, formerly of Breitbart News, understood the power of narrative warfare. The campaign pushed stories through friendly outlets, amplified rumors, and planted narratives designed to distract, divide, or dominate the cycle. They learned that truth didn't have to win, volume did. Then there was social media. Trump's Twitter account became a weapon. He bypassed journalists entirely, speaking directly to millions of followers. He mocked opponents, announced policies, and attacked institutions, all in real time. Each tweet triggered a news cycle, forcing networks and rivals to respond. His online presence became a form of psychological and political control. But perhaps the most controversial element of the media strategy was data-driven manipulation. Trump's digital team, guided in part by Jared Kushner, worked with data firms to target voters at a granular level. Companies like Cambridge Analytica claim to use psychographic profiling to influence behavior, pushing customized messages designed to provoke specific emotional reactions. In swing states, users saw ads tailored to their fears, values, or prejudices. Immigration, gun rights, Hillary Clinton's emails. The messages weren't always consistent, but they were effective. The goal was not to convince everyone. It was to motivate key groups, depress the opponent's turnout, and dominate online conversation. Meanwhile, the line between fact and fiction blurred. Fake news sites flourished. Troll accounts spread conspiracy theories. Russian-linked social media bots amplified divisions already present in American society. While the extent of coordination remains debated, the Trump campaign certainly benefited from the digital fog of war. In the end, Trump didn't win in spite of the media. He won in large part because of how he used it. He broke its rhythm. He rewrote the rules. And he showed that in the modern era, information, even misinformation, could be weaponized with ruthless precision. As the Trump campaign surged ahead in the polls, so did the controversies swirling around it. By late 2016, it became clear that this campaign wouldn't be remembered only for its outsider tactics or populist tone. It would also be remembered for the sheer number of scandals, leaks, and investigations that unfolded around it in real time. One of the most explosive issues was the question of foreign interference. In July 2016, just weeks before the Democratic National Convention, WikiLeaks released thousands of internal emails from the Democratic National Committee. The leak embarrassed the party and revealed internal efforts to undermine Bernie Sanders. But the bigger question soon emerged. Where did the emails come from? U.S. intelligence agencies quickly concluded that the hack was the work of Russian state actors. The goal, they said, was to interfere in the U.S. election, damage Hillary Clinton, and assist Donald Trump. The Trump campaign denied any involvement, but the suspicion only grew. In June 2016, a now infamous meeting took place in Trump Tower between senior campaign officials, including Donald Trump Jr., Jared Kushner, and Paul Manafort, and a Russian lawyer who claimed to have damaging information on Clinton. the meeting, initially denied, would later become a central point in investigations. The campaign claimed it led nowhere. Critics saw it as a clear sign of willingness to accept foreign help. Meanwhile, internal leaks from within the Trump camp became routine. Staffers often clashed, and their disputes spilled into the press. Confidential strategy documents, internal emails, and even private conversations found their way into headlines. Some leaks appeared to come from disgruntled aides. Others seemed orchestrated to settle internal scores or shape public perception. Paul Manafort's presence became especially problematic. The veteran political consultant, who briefly served as campaign chairman, came under scrutiny for his past lobbying work for pro-Russian interests in Ukraine. When news broke of secret payments and undisclosed foreign ties, Manafort was forced to resign. But the damage was done. Then came the Access Hollywood tape. In October 2016, just weeks before the election, The Washington Post released a 2005 recording in which Trump could be heard making explicit, derogatory comments about women. The political world braced for collapse. Republican leaders condemned the remarks. Some called for Trump to drop out, but he didn't. And within days, he shifted the narrative by attacking Hillary Clinton over her husband's past scandals and doubling down on his defiance. Through it all, the campaign projected strength. Each controversy was reframed as an attack from a corrupt elite, a rigged system, or the fake news media. The constant churn of scandal didn't weaken Trump's base, it hardened it. Supporters saw the candidate not as flawed, but as targeted. Not as reckless, but as rebellious. These scandals, from Russian interference to damaging leaks and personal controversies, didn't derail the campaign. Paradoxically, they became part of its fuel. In a media environment flooded with outrage and contradiction, the Trump campaign learned to survive by staying louder than the storm. While most campaigns are run by managers, pollsters, and advisors, Donald Trump's campaign was run by one person above all, Donald Trump. His influence wasn't symbolic. It was direct, constant, and often unpredictable. Behind closed doors, he wasn't just a candidate, he was the decision-maker, the brand, and the message itself. Trump's leadership style was unlike anything most of his staff had experienced. He distrusted traditional structures, avoided long meetings, and often ignored data-driven advice in favor of gut instinct. Staffers could spend days preparing detailed strategy briefings, only to watch him discard them in favor of what felt right in the moment. His impulses frequently overrode planning, and in many cases it worked. Rather than rely on consultants, Trump often turned to a close circle of family members and informal advisors. Jared Kushner, Ivanka Trump, and even longtime friends from the business world were known to have the candidate's ear. Many campaign professionals found themselves bypassed, outranked by loyalty rather than experience. He treated the campaign like a business, or more precisely, like a production. He understood the power of image and instinctively knew how to control the narrative. Whether walking onto a rally stage, calling into cable news shows unannounced, or launching a tweet storm at midnight, Trump thrived on chaos. His unpredictability became a weapon. Behind the scenes, staff were constantly reacting. They would watch Twitter during the night to see what he might post. They monitored live interviews to determine if they'd need to do damage control. Internal messaging memos were often obsolete within hours. The campaign wasn't coordinated from the top down. It orbited around a single, central figure whose mood could shift at any moment. But Trump's role wasn't limited to disruption. He also had a sharp sense for voter emotion. He understood what his base cared about: immigration, American pride, economic insecurity, distrust of elites. He repeated key messages endlessly, not because of polling, but because he sensed they worked. His repetition was deliberate, his tone aggressive, and his posture confrontational. To his supporters, it was authenticity. Many moments that looked spontaneous, controversial statements, nicknames for opponents, on-stage gestures, were, in fact, crafted over time. He tested phrases at rallies, watched a crowd reaction, and kept what landed. It was political theater blended with marketing instinct. Trump also created an environment of competition within his team. Aides were known to fight for his attention, leak to the press to weaken rivals, and shift their advice based on what they thought he wanted to hear. It was a culture built on loyalty and survival, not hierarchy. In the end, Trump's behind-the-scenes role wasn't about managing logistics or crunching numbers. It was about asserting control over the message, the brand, and the team. His unpredictability wasn't a flaw in the system. It was the system. What happened behind the curtain wasn't a tightly choreographed campaign. It was a force of personality dominating the machinery around it. And that force, in 2016, proved strong enough to reshape American politics. By the morning of November 9, 2016, the political world had changed. Donald J. Trump had been elected the 45th President of the United States. It was one of the most unexpected electoral victories in American history, a result that stunned political analysts, confounded pollsters, and revealed deep fractures in the country's social and political fabric. For many, the outcome wasn't just a political upset. It was a warning sign. The Trump campaign had broken nearly every rule of conventional campaigning. It defied the advice of experts, disregarded traditional decorum, and often operated in open contradiction to established democratic norms. Yet it succeeded because it understood something fundamental. In the digital age, narrative is power, and disruption can be more effective than persuasion. Trump's victory exposed the limitations of the old political playbook. Ground games, party endorsements, institutional backing, none of it could compete with the momentum generated by constant media dominance, digital micro-targeting, and an unfiltered message delivered straight to voters. It also highlighted the vulnerability of democratic systems to manipulation, both internal and external. The spread of misinformation, the strategic use of social media, the targeting of voter emotions through data, and the exploitation of societal divisions weren't side effects. They were central tools. The campaign's success proved that emotion could overpower information, and that outrage could be engineered. Internally, Trump's campaign was a case study in improvisation, loyalty-based leadership, and competing power centers. And yet, despite the chaos, the message remained consistent: anti-establishment, nationalist, aggressive, and defiant. Every scandal, every leak, every criticism was reframed as proof of persecution by the elite. This narrative wasn't defensive, it was weaponized. The legacy of the campaign didn't end on election night. In many ways, it began there. The strategies pioneered in 2016, chaotic media dominance, populist messaging, and digital manipulation, became a template for future campaigns around the world. The Trump campaign taught political actors a new language, one built not on consensus, but on conflict, not on facts, but on feeling, not on stability, but on disruption. But it also left behind a fractured country. By pulling back the curtain on what really happened behind closed doors, we begin to understand how easily politics can become performance, how loyalty can eclipse accountability, and how rapidly institutions can be challenged when power is personalized. The Trump campaign didn't just change the outcome of one election. It altered the structure of modern political warfare. And perhaps the most important question now is, what comes next? You're one of us. Stay curious, stay brave. Like, subscribe, and never miss a twist.